It's a vital process that the government undertakes every fiscal year. And once again, we are proud to have received a clean audit opinion from the Auditor General of Ontario. This marks the 7th straight year that we have attained a clean audit opinion, and I believe that this speaks to our commitment to openness, accountability, and fiscal responsibility. A clean audit opinion, also known as an unqualified opinion, is the gold standard in financial accounting auditing. When the province receives this opinion, it means that the Auditor General, an independent legislative officer following professional auditing and accounting standards, has thoroughly examined our financial statements and found them to be free from material misstatements. In simpler terms, the financial statements accurately reflect the government's financial position, performance, and cash flows. While the document goes into detail about numerous targeted investments, I would first like to give a general overview of the province's finances. For the fiscal year that ended on March 31st, Ontario invested $195.2 billion across all programs. This represents a 4.7% or $8.8 billion increase in program spending over the previous fiscal year. This can be seen in many crucial areas, including a significant increase in healthcare, education, and infrastructure spending. Our government remains laser-focused on a targeted and responsible approach to the province's finances. We are making the right investments to create conditions to attract jobs and investments while maintaining a strong focus on financial sustainability. Pour l'année fiscale qui s'est terminée le 31 mars, l'Ontario a investi 195,2 milliards de dollars dans l'ensemble des programmes. Dans plusieurs domaines essentiels, comme la santé, l'éducation et les infrastructures, on observe une augmentation importante des sommes consacrées. Nous procédons à des investissements judicieux pour favoriser les conditions permettant de créer des emplois et attirer les investisseurs, tout en gardant le cap sur la viabilité financière. As promised, our government is delivering on the most ambitious capital plan in Ontario's history by increasing infrastructure spending by $4.4 billion to a total of $23.6 billion. This significant investment will help build the roads, highways, public transit, hospitals, schools, and other community infrastructure that will define the Ontario of tomorrow. Notable infrastructure projects include the expansion of Highway 401 in Cambridge, new contract awards to build the Bradford Bypass, and our historic plan to expand the subway system by 50%. In healthcare, we have increased our investments by $7 billion, or 8.9%, last fiscal year to a total of $85.5 billion. These increased investments will help more local hospitals and healthcare facilities deliver convenient care closer to home. In education, the province's investment increased by 7.6% to a total of $37.2 billion. Approximately $1.4 billion in funding supported nearly 3,500 repair and rehabilitation projects in schools across the province. In the 2023-2024 school year, 21 new schools and additions were opened, creating over 7,000 new student spaces, including 6 French language school projects and over 700 childcare spaces. That means more Ontario students have begun the school year in modern, state-of-the-art classrooms. Of course, the report offers more details on all of these investments than I can mention today, so I invite all of you to read the full document at ontario.ca. While the public accounts gives us a good snapshot of our province's finances during the last fiscal year, we know we must continue to build Ontario for future generations. And under the leadership of Premier Ford, I'm confident that Ontario will remain the best place to work, live, and raise a family anywhere in the world. Merci beaucoup. I will now invite Minister Bethlenfalvy to say a few words.
Thank you, Minister. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here alongside Minister Mulroney this morning, my long-standing colleague and a key player in our team to continue building Ontario's economy. Since we first took office in 2018, our government has been transparent with taxpayers about the fiscal health of the province. Every 90 days, I am out before the people of Ontario to provide an update on our finances, most recently with the release of the first quarter finances report last month. And now today, alongside Minister Mulroney, to speak to the province's 2023-24 public accounts for the previous fiscal year. As this report demonstrates, our government continues to deliver on our plan to build, with targeted investments in critical infrastructure such as municipal infrastructure to support housing, roads, public transit, hospitals, and schools for our rapidly growing communities. In total, some $190 billion in capital investment over the next 10 years, all without raising a single tax on the people and businesses of Ontario. Comme le montre ce rapport, notre gouvernement continue de concrétiser son plan de bâtir l'Ontario, avec des investissements ciblés dans des infrastructures essentielles telles que les infrastructures municipales pour soutenir le logement, les routes, les transports en commun, les hôpitaux et les écoles pour nos collectivités en croissance rapide. En tout, quelques 190 milliards de dollars d'investissement en immobilisation au cours des 10 prochaines années. Et ce, sans augmenter le moindrement les impôts payés par la population et les entreprises de l'Ontario. We're doing all this without sacrificing the values of fiscal prudence and responsibility that underline our work to build the province. Today's report clearly outlines our government's efforts to maintain an economically progressive, yet fiscally responsible approach to governance. The public accounts notes a 2023-24 deficit of just over $6.6 billion, or some $647 million approximately, which is $0.7 billion lower than the 2023 budget projection, cementing our government's commitment to retain a path to balance by 2026-27. This lower than projected deficit was driven by a combination of higher revenues and, of course, lower interest on debt. In fact, our interest on debt relative to revenues is at levels the province has not seen since the 1980s. This is a very good thing for taxpayers in Ontario. And our net debt to GDP ratio, which is a measure of our fiscal health, is the best it's been in a decade. In practical terms, this means not only is our government able to borrow more efficiently than before, but at the lowest cost of any province, proving that we can simultaneously grow our economy and reduce the deficit. Altogether, our efforts to reduce our borrowing costs have saved the province $1 billion since last year. That's more money than we are able to reinvest directly to build the schools, the hospitals, the roads, the highways for the people of Ontario that they depend on, while investing in better services and keeping costs down. As I've said before, and will repeat again today, Ontario is not immune to potential economic slowdown. Global conflict, growing trade protectionism, and its supply chains all impact the province's economic outlook. But even in the face of these challenges, our government's targeted and responsible approach is working, and our economy remains resilient, as the 2023-24 public accounts highlight. That resilience reinforces Ontario's place as an island of stability amidst a troubled world. And it demonstrates that our 2024 budget, Building a Better Ontario, is the right plan at the right time to navigate this uncertainty. This equally fiscally responsible and economically driven plan has not gone unnoticed. Following the release of this year's budget, Morningstar DBRS upgraded Ontario's credit rating to AA, the first such upgrade in almost 2 decades. And both S&P and Moody's placed a positive outlook on Ontario's credit ratings. Ontario, for the first time in more than 10 years, now pays the lowest interest rates out of every province in Canada on new debt issues. Overall, Ontario's finances are in an enviable position. But even as our efforts continue to pay off, we know that workers and families are feeling the pinch of inflation and higher interest rates on their household budgets. And government is no exception. That's why we must maintain our path to balance, as well as our work to keep costs down and reduce fees and taxes for the people and businesses of Ontario at a time when people are still feeling like the cost of everything is up. C'est pourquoi nous devons garder le cap vers l'équilibre et maintenir nos efforts pour maîtriser les coûts et réduire les frais pour la population et les entreprises de l'Ontario à un moment où les gens ont encore l'impression que tout coûte plus cher. And it's why our government will continue with its responsible approach by making targeted choices that will keep our province as the best place to work, to live, to do business, and raise a family anywhere in the world. I look forward to updating the public on our plan's next steps later this fall as part of the 2024 Ontario Economic Outlook and Fiscal Review. And with that, Minister Mulroney and I would be very pleased to take questions now.
Minister, we've heard in the briefing that at least part of the deficit improvement was due to higher than expected international student tuition revenues. And we know we heard back in your spring budget that the projected loss in revenue from the federal government's changes was going to be about $3 billion over 2 years. Does yesterday's announcement further concern you? What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think first of all, you're right. We did incorporate that in our 24 budget. So the numbers are incorporated. We provided some sustainability to help colleges and universities navigate these changes. We continue to be there for colleges and universities. You know, at 10%, I think you're referring to the 10% drop yesterday. You know, we'll update the numbers in the fall economic statement. You know, we got to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place, the housing, the healthcare, the subways, the roads, to make sure that the population, people who want to come to this great country, that we can accommodate that population growth. So we're doing the things. We're thinking long term about what we want that situation to continue, that Canada remains a beacon of hope in the world.
Given the 10% announced yesterday, are you prepared to offer colleges and universities any further financial help?
You know, I know our minister works very closely with the colleges and universities, and we'll assess the situation, and I'll have a fiscal update in November, or certainly no later than November 15th.
Minister, we were told during the tech briefing that about $6.7 billion has been spent on Bill 124 compensation thus far. What's left? What's the total amount that will...
Yeah, and I'm going to pass that to, thank you for the question. I'm going to pass it to Mr. Mulroney. I'll just say that, you know, we've incorporated, as we updated in our first quarter and certainly in the budget, as those numbers come through. Minister Mulroney can walk you through the specific numbers, and it's in our budget.
Thank you. Yes, so for this year, $4.1 billion was for Bill 124 retroactive payments. The total 6.7 is over 2 years. Going forward, all compensation increases will be included in the base compensation within each ministry.
So is there an amount that's projected? Peter, you said that it's being budgeted for. So what is expected to be paid? What's remaining? And how will that affect government services for the next few years?
Well, we're focused on maintaining and improving government services. We've made the investments in compensation. We've done the retroactive payments, and going forward, compensation increases will be reflected in the base compensation within each ministry.
So no remaining projection.
I can maybe just jump in. When you update your forecast, that's through the budget and the fall economic statement. Typically what we do is when there's uncertainty about the quantum of that in terms of what the percentage increases are, because there's numerous ones that either go through the arbitration process or through negotiated settlements. So we incorporate through the contingency funds an estimate of that, but we don't get very specific because those negotiations, those discussions have to occur.
Ministers, has there been any assessment of what you would have paid had you not brought Bill 124 in place?
We're just dealing with not the hypotheticals. We're dealing with the actual numbers. We've incorporated them. As you can see, we've been very transparent about those numbers as they become available. And I'm very proud that we've got a $0.6 billion deficit, virtually a balanced budget in the 23-24. And let me tell you, you can do both. You can both invest in the workers and the people and the businesses and the infrastructure of Ontario with a vision, and you can balance the books. And we're still on target to balance our books.
When you first brought in Bill 124 yourself, was there a projection internally of how much you thought you were going to save, and is it more or less than $6 billion?
Well, certainly when we brought in the Bill 124 and we had wage limits of 1% per annum over 3 years, at that time, inflation was much lower. It was in the 1% to 2% range, and certainly we would have, with those numbers, had forecasts. But of course, COVID and the world changed in between, and so we are where we are. And we're moving on to continue to build Ontario.
Yeah, Minister, moving on, but don't you acknowledge that Bill 124 is a giant blunder? I mean, the legal time alone, the alienation of all these nurses and unions. During COVID, the government maintained this wage cap. This was your idea. Do you acknowledge now to Ontarians this was a bad idea?
Absolutely not. And, I think we are responsible for all aspects of building Ontario, which includes respecting taxpayers' money and balancing the demands of our great workers right across the province. Of course, we ran again in 2022 and got a bigger majority. So I feel very good that the people of Ontario gave us a vote of confidence in the way we're managing the economy and managing the fiscal path to balance.
So you have to make $6.7 billion in back pay, and you won't even acknowledge that that wasn't really the greatest outcome?
I would just, right around the world, you're facing wage increases, and they're all negotiated in good faith. We're moving forward, and I think we've got our focus on building a very strong Ontario, and we want to make sure, in these turbulent times, we saw, interest rates drop 50 basis points by the feds in the U.S. yesterday. We want to attract capital, we want to build good jobs and bigger paychecks, and we're going to keep going.
Mr. When your government defeated the Liberal government more than 6 years ago, Ontario's net debt was around $330 billion. I believe it's about $100 billion higher than that now. The largest sub-sovereign debt in the world is what your government has brought Ontarians. With that in mind, can you say that your government is fiscally conservative?
Absolutely, 100%. Well, a couple of things. First off, the measures that you look, it's all relative, right? The debt to GDP, which is kind of the heart pulse, if you will, is the lowest that it's been in 10 years. 37 and change debt to GDP, our interest expense, the lowest since the 80s. So you have to look at the relative. And of course, what goes into a lot of that debt is the infrastructure that we're paying for. And I think if you're going to borrow money, I like to borrow money for things that are going to be around for a long time: subways, roads, hospitals. And so that's the good use of debt. And let me finally say the economy is now around $1.2 trillion. So our GDP has grown. So I would say we definitely would get a gold star in my mind for managing the fiscal debt, but look at the credit rating agencies. They're independent. They've got one upgrade to AA from DBRS and two on positive watch from S&P and Moody's. Those independent bodies are looking at our fiscal health.
Are you spending that infrastructure money in the right way? Our colleagues at the Trillium looked at Highway 413. Your own internal projections show it's not going to save commuters hardly any time at all. Yet you're set to spend, you're not even saying how many billions on it.
Have you been in Brampton lately? Try getting around. Have you, around here? I mean, we've got gridlock. We gotta continue to invest. It's going to get worse if we don't invest, not just in the 413 and the subways that we're building here. We're widening, in my riding, Pickering, the 401 going east all the way to Brockville. We're widening Highway 7. We're building subways and more public transit, the GO system, than we've ever done. Like I said, $190 billion. If you don't, these things don't happen overnight. These things, you have to have a vision. We went to the people in 2022 saying we would build 413, and we got a huge vote of support for building that. In fact, every riding in Peel region, every riding in York region, full support.
Minister, if the FAO finds that the alcohol expansion is not good value for money for Ontarians, will you change your policy on that front?
First off, the FAO doesn't do value for money. They're doing a review. I think they've been very clear of their what they're looking at, and I would say this: they've got to do their work. And I've heard from the people of Ontario that they really like us opening up convenience and choice to consumers right across the province. It's been good for small businesses. I've heard from convenience stores who say this is a game changer. They're hiring people. And I like the fact that there's more competition. So I'll let the FAA do their work, but I've heard from the people of Ontario, and they wanted us to move forward. And that's another campaign commitment that we got elected to do. So we're getting things done.
Minister, was that done to open the door to an early election? The beer and corn stores?
No.
Was that setting the stage for that?
What I would say, it was done because we made a commitment in 2018 to do that. I think you've heard I'm a Quebecer. I grew up in Quebec. You could buy beer and wine in corner stores, dépanneurs. We campaigned in 2018 on that, and then through COVID, we weren't able to complete that. So we re-upped in 2022 to to open up the convenience stores, the grocery stores. So it's just executing what we said we would do.
Campaign though on breaking a contract a year early and spending hundreds of millions of dollars, so.
You know, we said the cost would be up to $225 million. We stand by that. We're scrutinizing every penny that comes in. That was to protect jobs and make the transition that would happen at any point in time, whether early, on time, or late. The other thing I would say, we've done the same thing with the LCBO. This is a big transition. A 100-year monopoly that's being broke up, a 10-year liberal monopoly with the beer store. And this is what the people want. This is what we've campaigned on. And finally, I would say with regard to the LCBO, I think this is a real good opportunity for the LCBO. I have a lot of confidence in them. They're going to be, they've got great stores, great online experience. They're selling small producers' product in their stores, which is great for craft breweries, craft wineries. And of course, they're going to do the wholesaling starting in 2026 of everything, including beer, which is the biggest seller.
We expand the LCBO hours from 7 to 11 so they can compete with the convenience stores.
You know, that's something the AGCO looks at, not me. I'm focused on making sure that we stand by our commitment to do the next phase, which is to now allow grocery stores who choose to want to sell beer and wine. We have 450. We've had almost 200 more apply for licenses so that, you know, when you're buying that loaf of bread or whatever and you want to pick up your six-pack or your bottle of wine, it's more convenient.
$225 million, my understanding is that's not up front. They have to you know, continuously give you guys receipts for how that money is going to be spent. How much money has gone to the beer store from the taxpayers of Ontario so far?
I think it's pretty small right now, and on a relative to the 225, of course, I'll give you a more fulsome update in the fall economic statement.
If I can, just since we're talking about an early election, my question is for Minister Mulroney. Have you made a decision yet as to whether or not you are going to run for re-election?
Yes, I will, and I've already filed my papers.
Mr. Bethlenfalvy, a few years ago, the government appointed a special advisor to give it advice about what to do with alcohol sales, and to date, the government has followed that advice pretty much to a T, except for there was a recommendation about looking to broaden the sales of spirits. Is that next?
No, that's not our plan.
So you're completely ruling that out?
No, that's not our plan. We've been very clear that spirits are the domain of the LCBO, and we're going to continue that path. Beer, wine, and ready-to-drink are going to be available in grocery stores on October 31st on top of the 450 stores that already have it, and of course convenience stores.
And one of the other government's revenue drivers, the OLG, the public account shows that it's the income that it generated last year didn't match what was projected. What's the problem with the OLG?
It's not a problem. It's just, when the economy is tougher and discretionary dollars are less, land-based casinos, I think, not just in Ontario or Canada, around the world, generally see drops in revenue. But as the economy rebounds, and I'm very hopeful that the economy rebounds in a very positive way after these rising interest rates and high inflation, that's kind of normal. I will say the iGaming revenue has been helpful to expand the revenue to the province.
So Mr. Knight, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so OLG's all fine, dandy, no more changes coming on that front?
I'll update all the numbers in the fall economic statement.
I just wanted to circle back to alcohol. The grocery sector is not happy with the recycling rules in the new regime. We're hearing about particularly smaller groceries suggesting that they're going to give up their license and not sell booze once they're forced to recycle under the new rules. Are you looking at some sort of solution to keep them happy, change the way that you were going to require them to take empty?
I wouldn't say they're not happy. I think that they were, well, there's negotiations, and of course, they're businesses, and so they'll negotiate the way they want to. But I can tell you we're having constructive conversations to find the right solution to recycle. That's a core commitment of ours, and we'll continue those discussions. For those grocery stores, they know the rules. They have to accept if they're over 4,000 square feet, they have to do recycling. I can tell you that no one's given back a license, and number two, almost 200 new grocery stores, and I expect that number to increase. are going to offer beer and wine in their and ready to drinks in their stores. October 31st, there's still another 5 weeks to go. I'm very pleased with the progress to date, and the recycling will be part of our ongoing discussions to make sure we land what jurisdictions around the world have been able to solve.
You might change the rules
No.
to help them,
No.
allow them to recycle somewhere else?
No, we've made a commitment to that these are the requirements. We're in active discussions with them, and we'll land that.
Are you earmarking any money for the decant and renovation of this building, or the legislative building?
You know, that's something you'd have to ask the minister in charge of that. You know, taking care of renovation to a building that's, I think, over 100 years old is a complex process.
Set any money aside for that?
We set money aside for all kinds of things in our contingency funds, make sure that but we don't have certainty right now, so I can't give you any specifics on that.
Minister, you mentioned earlier that you're on path to balancing the budget. Can you give us a date? Which budget is it going to be that we're actually going to be able to balance? Is it going to be the 2025 budget?
2026-27, I'll be giving a further update in the fall economic statement.
If there's going to be an election in 2025, why not balance it before?
Sorry, who's having an election in 2025?
Well, you tell us.
Not us.
Not us. I mean, we already had our vote.
No.
So we're positive.
You know, you know, it's totally fair to ask that question, but you know, I've been asked that question many times. The way I approach any sort of potential election, I know we've got June 4th, 2026, and if there's one earlier, I'm going to make sure that's a hypothetical I can't really address. But what I can tell you is things like moving the projects forward, whether it's building a school or building advancing works, building the hospitals, long-term care. Just the other day, I was driving around Pickering just to take a look. You know, we've leveled the ground, or the Education Ministry of Education leveled the ground for 2 new schools. We've seen a long-term care facility that we announced like 6 months ago on Alexander Knox Road, 250 units. That building's halfway up already. We announced a new post-acute rehabilitation center to be based in Pickering for the whole Durham region. We approved 5 helicopters so we can fight crime more effectively, give the tools to our first responders, our police forces, and so on. So the way I think about it is, you know, we made a commitment to the people we ran that we're going to fight crime, we're going to build the infrastructure, we're going to reboot the economy and support workers, and Colin, you know, I'll do that, and when the gun goes off for the election, I'll be ready.
That concludes our media availability.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you everyone for
Thank you very
coming.
much. Thank you.